Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn is an odd movie in that it was created in both a post-Deadpool as well as post-Suicide Squad world. It's also Warner Brothers' second attempt to have their own Guardians of the Galaxy, but this is perhaps a more blatant attempt than Suicide Squad was. As you probably know if you're watching this video, Suicide Squad was a less than loved film, while Deadpool became something of a mainstream phenomenon, being both well received as well as making a lot of fucking money. This caused a pretty perfect series of events leading to the follow-up to Harley Quinn's story being a very Deadpool-esque film, which logically makes sense if you look at the Harley Quinn character from a very basic perspective, as she is a clown, which leads to the assumption that she's a less serious and even a comical character. In fact, DC has been marketing the character this way for years, with her becoming something of an anti-hero, much like Deadpool. And if you divorce her character from Joker's fully psychotic brand, it isn't a hard stretch. With that said, this kind of makes her not interesting at all. The thing that makes her character so interesting is that she has this abusive relationship with Joker. You could probably say she has Stockholm Syndrome, and that's a relatable thing for men and women who are in abusive relationships, and actually gives her a unique and very real issue, something many characters in comic books or surrounding media don't have. And this movie tries to address this, hence the title, The Emancipation of Harley Quinn, but this movie falls short on that aspect, much how like it falls short on basically every other serious social topic it tries to tackle. I can't really fathom why this film is marketed as Birds of Prey, as they're basically just side characters in this film, and it's especially weird because Harley isn't really associated with the group in the source material, but whatever, I don't mind changes as long as they're warranted. Anyhow, we'll get back to these themes pretty shortly, as I should probably address the plot real quick. This movie follows Harley Quinn shortly after her breakup with the Joker, so she blows up Ace Chemicals, signaling to the crime underworld that she's broken up with the Joker. Anyhow, the criminals, including our main antagonist, Black Mask, want to see her dead. Meanwhile, Black Mask is searching for Huntress's family diamonds, which holds the information on her family's overseas fortune, which was lost after her family was killed. Anyhow, Harley meets Black Canary, who works for Black Mask, as well as Cassandra Cain, the latter of which who has eaten the diamond to hide it and sell it later. Also, meanwhile, Huntress is hunting for the people who killed her family. Anyhow, the film follows this MacGuffin chase until it ends up being a big fight where the Birds of Prey team is formed. Then Black Mask dies and the Huntress uses her newly acquired fortune to start the Birds of Prey to fight crime in Gotham. Harley Quinn confronts her life post-Joker as they've broken up between the events of Suicide Squad in this film. It is a bit of an odd character switch as we see she was saved by the Joker at the end of Suicide Squad, making the audience assume there was a story being set up there. Obviously, this is to do with the real-life context of Jared Leto being fired after his term as Joker was universally panned. So the idea in this film is that Harley has to get over Joker and their abusive relationship, and that idea was mostly underbaked, but we will return to this idea pretty soon. Anyhow, Harley is a very different character from her more grounded interpretation in Suicide Squad.
I have done everything you said, every test, every trial, every initiation. I have proved I love you. Just accept it.
Got it. I am not someone who is loved. I'm an idea.
And while it addresses her trauma following the Joker breakup, Harley is played a lot more for laughs in this one, with Harley making memeable Deadpool-esque jokes constantly.
Whoa!
Okay, you're awake. Toss that for me, will
She also is a bit more airheaded, which is a bit of a step back from what we see in Suicide Squad. And while we see some moments of her internal sadness over the situation, her meme moments with things like her really loving this greasy ass guy's egg sandwich seems more like LOL so random humor than something like using humor as a coping mechanism, which I think would have fleshed out her character more. Overall, I think her character is a pretty big step down from what we got in Suicide Squad, and while the abuse angle is at best ignored and at worst romanticized in Suicide Squad, this film tries to be socially conscious, but it fails because her character comes off as an unfunny, meme-pandering mess. Cassandra Cain is perhaps one of the biggest character assassinations in film adaptation history. In this film, she's a young pickpocket who swallows the MacGuffin and ends up being taken under the wing of Harley Quinn. This character is nothing like she is in the comics. In the comics, she's silent because she was the daughter of David Cain and Lady Shiva. She was taught never to speak and was essentially programmed by her family to be the perfect bodyguard for Ra's al Ghul and would eventually become Batgirl. This is what I really hate about superhero adaptations. It's fine to deviate from the source material, but why not just make this an original character? She is in no way related to the Cassandra Cain we know, a character who is really unique and interesting and has a big fan base and a lot of story possibilities. I know Warner would never do anything with her in film anyways because Jeff Johns essentially ruined and retconned every great DC character from the 90s and 2000s in DC's catalog. But come on, this simply isn't the same character. There are 4.5 billion Asian people in the world, and presumably about 2.3 billion of those are women. It's pretty racist for Warner Brothers to say, we wrote this Asian girl, what character can she be? Only for some guy to say, hey, we got this Cassandra Cain character who's Asian, let's just use her. Also, what's the problem with making a new character anyways? No one complained when the cash cow star of this film, Harley Quinn, was created for Batman the Animated Series in the 90s. She wouldn't even be translated into comics till the mid-2000s. I guess it would have been a creative risk to make a new character. Comic fans may get confused if it's a character they've never heard of before.
So this book is just 100% propaganda. It's the Unstoppable Wasp. It has this Mark Waid created character, Nadia Van Dyne, who is just trash. It makes no sense. They wanted a younger version of the Wasp.
Warner Brothers has to be very careful not to disappoint them. Anyhow, rant over on that, I guess. I think it just shows the writers of this film have virtually no creativity since they can't come up with a single unique idea. Speaking of lacking unique ideas though, Huntress loosely follows the plot of her characters in the comics, being the daughter of a slain crime family. However, for some reason, they just characterize her to be like Drax from the Guardians of the Galaxy.
And when he does, that's when you...
Why would I put my finger on his throat?
Does she always talk like the cop in a bad 80s movie, or is that just
Fuck
me?
you and fuck you.
What?
I mean, we were amazing there.
Yeah! Hell yeah. I agree completely, so I'll do that as well.
Thank you.
I think this is for two reasons. One, for comedy potential, since Drax's cluelessness led to some of the funnier moments in the Guardian films. And two, because the writers aren't creative and wanted really bad to make the next Guardians of the Galaxy without working hard to make new characters with a good dynamic, so why not just copy the old characters? I don't have anything else to say about her besides she sucks in this film. Renee Montoya is a character being held back by the Gotham PD because she's a woman and is being treated unfairly. Black Canary is a singer at Black Mask's club and doesn't like crime, but is forced into it, I guess. She is severely undercooked as a character, despite being one of two characters in this film that are actually part of the Birds of Prey. You know, the series this film is trying, albeit failing, to adapt. Black Mask, as played by Ewan McGregor, is a misogynist crime lord who wants the MacGuffin to become rich. He has a pretty strong implied homosexual relationship with Zaz, which may have given him something to actually do besides just being evil and misogynist, but I guess that'd be a bad look for the film, so they didn't make him gay. Zaz is Black Mask's partner in crime, and as I mentioned, probably in life as well. In the comics, he's a serial killer. In the film, he's essentially a devoted henchman. I've never heard of Chris Messina, who played him, but I really like him in this film, actually. This film really wants to tackle a lot of modern social issues like abusive relationships, human trafficking, misogyny, the LGBT community, and sexism in the workplace, but basically fails at all these themes. Let's go through them one by one. Abusive relationships are obviously a huge problem in this world. People shouldn't be abused in relationships, this is common sense, but as I implied, this film fucking failed to bring this to light in a mature way. In the film, Harley Quinn is thrown out by the Joker, who in this film we see but not really. They didn't want Jared Leto's version back, so we see him depicted in cartoon form or from the back. The scene where she's thrown out and crying about this terrible man who used to abuse her is played for laughs, like isn't that relatable, how terrible this abusive man who threw me out is. What will I do now? On top of that, Harley copes with alcohol, which is also played for laughs, even though a lot of people in this circumstance probably would cope by abusing alcohol, and then she's almost kidnapped by human traffickers, which leads to my next point. Human trafficking is a terrible thing to put in your film as a throwaway plot point, especially since the scene is essentially just in the film to set up a throwaway joke / karate battle. Basically, after getting horribly drunk, Harley is being led to an inconspicuous van where she's going to be kidnapped, but luckily Black Canary is here to do karate and beat up the human traffickers before they kidnap her.
I don't need your help. I got this.
You got this?
This scene is of course scored by a 70s disco song as an homage to the 70s blaxploitation kung fu movies, which only makes sense since this is a black woman doing kung fu. This scene, which the YouTube channel Epic Movie Clips calls Black Canary saving Harley Quinn fight scene, is capped off with Harley Quinn cleverly quipping, "Don't touch what you can't afford, mister."
Don't touch what you can't afford, mister.
Truly a great and informative scene depicting possibly the worst crime that could happen to a woman. Fantastic. Misogyny is perhaps the most touched upon theme in this film, and it's done with such grace, like the scene where Black Mask cuts up a girl's dress to scare and embarrass her, to which Black Canary cries. This scene has little to no plot relevance besides to show that Black Mask is a bad guy. Another couple of embarrassing moments in this film are with these character slides, which show why certain characters hate Harley Quinn. One of which shows the eggplant emoji, implying that he hates Harley because either she doesn't have a penis or because he does. There's also a scene where one of Black Mask's grievances against Harley is the fact that she has a vagina. Are either of these slides elaborated on? No, not really. But I guess the movie says it's misogyny, so it proves a point, I guess? I don't really know what they were going for with this. The film really tried and failed to have LGBT representation. And while LGBT representation is a good thing, I think Warner Bros. Would rather hint at it than actually make it a plot point. The montage at the start of the film shows that Harley had a girlfriend. Okay, cool. Did they ever do anything to elaborate on this? Well, no, but LGBT people will like it, so let's put it in. Except she goes on to say in this very montage that a great man has to have an equally great broad, an arguably sexist thing to say, so I don't really know what point they were trying to prove here. I don't know, it just feels like something they added for the "see we like the LGBT community" clout. Next, it's mentioned in passing that Renee Montoya is a lesbian, but they don't do anything with this revelation. This is probably the best use of the LGBT in this film, as it adds some lore to her character. I mean, she's still boring and doesn't do anything, but they took a real stab at it at least. Finally, Black Mask and Zaz. It's pretty clear to me these guys were meant to be a couple at some point, but they chickened out because it would look bad. I guess I may be wrong, but the way they talk to each other, sit alone eating dinner next to each other, and the fact that it looks like they were meant to kiss at like 5 points in this film, leads me to believe that was the intention. Black Mask is also not what I would call traditionally masculine.
Quinn got the girl. And they disappeared.
Fuck!
Which probably would work better with the misogyny themes. And honestly, I think they should have just bit the bullet and made him gay. That would have been an interesting revelation. But I think they were scared that if this revelation happens, that a crime boss and a murdering enforcer were part of the LGBT community would have looked upon it negatively, so Warner Brothers pulled out on the idea. Finally, sexism in the workplace. Renee Montoya keeps getting passed up for promotions for her male colleagues, making her quit the Gotham PD and join the Birds of Prey. I don't hate this revelation, but they just don't do anything with it to actually make it interesting, or to make it really add anything to Renee's character. There was certainly stuff they could have done with this, but as it stands, it's pretty half-baked. This film has really cool and well-shot fight scenes. Some of the stuff in this movie looks really cool, especially that fight with Harley and the people in jail at the Gotham PD building. Also, this film was shot pretty well, it looks good, so I have to give big props to the cinematographer because this is probably the nicest looking DCEU film. The continuity in this film is so shitty and hard to follow. In one scene, Black Canary, who lives in a really shitty apartment building with Cassie, gives Cassie an $100 bill, a moment which seems like it would be pretty impactful for these two worse-for-the-wear characters. But just like a scene later, Cassie pickpockets Black Canary and they act like they've never met before.
Get something to eat. Stay out of that. It's not worth it.
You know what? One day you're gonna pick the wrong pocket, sis.
Okay. Whatever.
I don't know how no one caught this during writing, filming, or the editing process. This film also is edited like shit, probably worse than Suicide Squad even. Harley is narrating the film, and I guess it's an unreliable narrator, so the film cuts around constantly to flashbacks, then to modern day, constantly, and it makes the film really hard to follow. I would say almost definitively it has worse editing than Suicide Squad. In fairness, it was a lot harder for me to follow on my first watch through. This time it was a bit easier, but still, the way they framed it was a really bad idea. The jokes almost never land in this film. That egg sandwich thing with Harley for like the first 15 minutes of the film was really dumb. Renee Montoya's shirt she wears for like half this film is really dumb, and I don't really get why they did it. The new title cards had a lot of these cringy moments, like how Black Mask hates Harley for having a vagina and voting for Bernie Sanders. First off, why would Harley Quinn vote for Bernie Sanders, or vote at all? She's a supervillain. Politics don't really affect her. Second, how did she vote for Bernie? Was it a write-in? Third, how does Black Mask know she voted for Bernie? Did she tell him? Fourth, if she's a felon, how did she vote? And why does Harley break the fourth wall in this film like 5 times?
I made the kid my apprentice. Call me a softie. I dare ya.
I guess it's more of an issue with the framing device, but fuck, it's stupid and distracting. Like, I know they wanted to rip off Deadpool, but even in the film Deadpool, him breaking the fourth wall doesn't really make sense because how the films are structured. Like, it works slightly better in the comics, but not by much. And with a character that's supposed to be fairly grounded like Harley, it's just really fucking stupid that she constantly breaks the fourth wall. They really wanted to make her Deadpool, I guess. Long story short, the jokes and self-referential humor were pretty cringe. Also, did the filmmakers not learn that the character slide thing was a lazy cop-out no one likes? That was like a primary complaint about Suicide Squad, and while these are just pop-ups, it's still annoying and hampers the flow of the film. This film actually has some good ideas, but constantly fails to execute them well. The framing could have worked, but it didn't. The messages could have worked, but they didn't. The story could have worked, but it didn't. It's a shame too because the film was shot well and Margot Robbie is good again, even though the writers don't really give her the same personality as established in Suicide Squad. Like, how do you Flanderize a character so bad after one film? I just don't understand it. Anyhow, we talked a lot about powerful themes in this video, which inspired me to review the most homophobic film I've ever seen next week. So if you liked this video, tune in next week for that. It'll be a real doozy. Plus, I'll have my friend Grant from Grant the Hierophant on to help me out on that episode. It should be fun, so if you guys haven't already, like and subscribe and comment because I like chatting with you guys. Thanks again.